Welcome to APCUG's Wednesday workshops, where we get together in the middle of the week to learn more about technology. We're very excited to have Al Williams back with us doing his part 3 of his Scammers and Other Scum. I talked with him earlier this week to say we were excited to have his chapter or his final chapter, part 3 today. And we discussed the fact that, well, this will never end, because as we figure out how to thwart these guys, they're going to figure out new ways. So I'm sure that Al will be back with us in 2025 with an update on, well, here's what they're doing now, and here's what you have to do now. But otherwise, I'm going to switch things over to Al. He'll be with us for a while so that he can answer questions before he has another meeting coming up after. That's why we moved him to the first presentation. So Al, I'll turn things over to you and share us our final current chapter of Scammers and Scummy Guys and all.
Thank you, John. I'm also experiencing some sort of crud, so my voice isn't quite normal, but hopefully it will work out. So welcome, everyone. I am Al Williams. I'm in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and here it is about 60 degrees and sunny, and we're supposed to have rain tonight. So let me set up the sharing. And now let me go into presentation mode. Do you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So this is part 3. And as John indicated, it is basically about scammers. Although there's a lot of other people involved in collecting personal information as well. But this one really is going to focus on those other people, the people besides scammers. So this presentation is about privacy. It's always been about privacy in the first 2 parts, but this time I need to emphasize that. And I'm going to have a working definition of privacy. It's the right to be left alone and control what information about yourself is shared with others. It's also the freedom to keep your personal matters and relationships secret or known only to a small group of people. Now, I think that definition, that working definition, resonates with a lot of people. I'm certain a lawyer would not agree with it. He'd have some other way of expressing it, but I think it's a good working definition. Now, while physical security measures and digital can significantly protect your private information, they cannot guarantee complete privacy. Ultimately, it's up to you. You control who you trust. And when you share, do the benefits of sharing outweigh the risk? Now, this process of evaluating risk and making informed decisions is known as creating a personal threat model. Now, I've shown a slide in the past with a giant fish going into the roof of a house. Oops, I forgot once again. Let me turn that down. Okay. In the past, I've shared a slide about a giant fish crashing into the roof of a house. It's an illustration that what I may think of as being a threat, you would not think of as being a threat. We all have our own threat models. I'd like to extend the problem of privacy to this. If someone steals your history, preferences, relationships, communications, biometrics, location history, you can't get that back. That knowledge cannot be unlearned, memories cannot be erased, and it leads to a summary. Security failures can be fixed, privacy failures cannot, and that's why privacy is so important. However, your private information does age. Some of what has been exposed in a breach, for example, is no longer interesting, but your new private information is always important to many organizations. As a refresher, part one was about our scamming our computing devices at home, and part two was about our online accounts. But today, protecting our personal information from other invasive species. I want to give you an executive summary just to kind of hang on to as I'm talking. Many organizations, government and private, want our personal information for a variety of reasons. We can't completely hide. We must provide some personal information in order to just to be able to function in society. We do have some personal information we want to keep private, sharing only with those we trust. And there are ways to keep that personal information private when we share with others. I want to start with this topic. Many organizations, government and private, want our personal information for a variety of reasons. But first, what does our private information reveal? In late 2021, the Director of National Intelligence convened a senior advisory group to look into the topic of commercially available information. That topic, that report, I should say, was declassified in the middle of 2023, and it is available at the source document that I've given down at the bottom of the slide. And I want to go through some things in this report that, excuse me, which are important for this discussion, for this presentation. First, why was the report to the DNI written? Well, given the increasing volume of data that is commercially available, the DNI said, I asked them to make recommendations regarding how and under what circumstances the intelligence community should use commercially available information, and to reflect on ensuring the protection of privacy and civil liberties. Well, that raises the question, what is commercially available information? Well, it's available commercially to the general public and is a subset of publicly available information. In turn, that raises the question, what is publicly available information? And this becomes very extensive. It's a sort of paragraph where you almost have to sit and just study it and think about what it's saying. PAI is information that has been published or broadcast for public consumption, is available on request to the public, is accessible online or otherwise to the public, is available to the public by subscription or purchase, could be seen or heard by any casual observer, but not amounting to physical surveillance, is made available at a meeting open to the public, or is observed by visiting any place or attending any event that is open to the public. That is a mouthful. But let's continue. Who sells the CAI? It's commercially available, so who sells it? It's often sold or otherwise made available by commercial entities, often referred to as data brokers or information resellers. They maintain large, sophisticated databases that include information such as credit histories, insurance claims, criminal records, employment histories, incomes, ethnicities, purchase histories, and interests, and there's even more. They collect data from commercial, government, or other publicly available sources. The data could include data information, voting registration, consumer purchase data, web browsing activities, warranty registrations, and other details of consumers' everyday interactions. This all comes from this report that the DNI asked the senior advisory group to do. All these words come from them. So how does this work? The GAO put out this graph, and on the left-hand side is a source of data. You'll see public records. That's the type of information you can get by going to a courthouse and just asking the court to provide information. There's publicly available information, which is stuff that you would find by reading the newspaper, going online, finding information online. It just, things that you would just pick up, you read the news on your iPhone or your Android phone, wherever it is, it's just available to you if you just happen to take the time to read it. But then there's non-public information, which I'll discuss in just a minute. An information reseller, otherwise known as a data broker, collects all types of information, all three types. They put it together, they analyze it, they repackage it, and then they sell it. And who buys it? Oh, there are business clients. I hope you can read those small print words there. Retailers, advertising networks, government, private entities, nonprofits. And by the way, that entry called government, in the United States, federal agencies are not allowed to create databases of people on their own. They are allowed to buy the information, and that little one word is saying that they buy it from data brokers. There's also people such as us. If we want to, we can contact the data brokers and buy information that we might be interested in. They also sell it to other data brokers. And how's it used? Used for marketing. It's used for things such as people search, people lookup, genealogy. It's also used as a way to create residential and business listings. And then there's an area of usage called pursuant to the Fair Credit Reporting Act. I tried to find out more about that. I honestly didn't quite understand what it's about. I do know it's related to the fact that consumer reporting agencies have laws and regulations that control their fair use of information. This implies that somehow that all gets fed, all this data broker stuff also gets fed into to meet their obligations for the Fair Credit Reporting Act. So back to the non-public information. This is information that's not available to the general public. Examples are Social Security numbers and bank account information, which are, by the way, protected by law to safeguard an individual's privacy. Now, if you think about it, in the data breach that take place, Social Security numbers are leaked fairly frequently. We don't hear too much about bank account information being leaked, although it has to be the case where it has been, but we certainly hear about Social Security numbers. What can be done with CAI, commercially available information? They make a point here that even though CAI may be anonymized, it is also possible using other sections of CAI to de-anonymize and identify individuals, including U.S. persons. In other words, when some data broker says, well, everything's been anonymized, it doesn't necessarily mean that you really are, that your information has been anonymized, because it's possible to use other CAI to identify you. So what can go wrong? Well, the report continues. It can reveal sensitive and intimate information about the personal attributes, private behavior, social connections, and speech of U.S. and non-U.S. persons. It can be misused to pry into private lives, ruin reputation, and cause emotional distress, and threaten the safety of individuals. It can increase the power of the government's ability to peer into private lives to levels that may exceed our constitutional traditions or other social expectations. The guys who wrote this report really did a lot of thinking about commercially available information, what it is, and what can be done with it. So, has the Supreme Court ruled in this area? Well, there is one ruling, Carpenter versus United States, which is a case about accessing cell site location without a warrant. The Supreme Court ruled in 2018, the data provides an intimate window into a person's life, revealing not only his particular movements, but through them, his familial, political, professional, religious, and sexual associations. These location records hold for many Americans the privacy of life. So just being able to track you with a cell phone as you're using your cell phone reveals all this. Now, there's a little bit more. They ruled in 2018. Sorry, I know what happened here. So the summary of what the Supreme Court said was that they ruled that accessing cell phone location records requires a warrant under the Fourth Amendment. The court also identified sensitive personal information, which I'm not going to cover right now. But this is what can be done with our private information as recorded by this senior advisory group who reported to the Director of National Intelligence. So that's what can be done. How is our private information being collected? Here's an example. The Georgetown Law, the university in Washington, D.C., has a Center on Privacy and Technology, and they issued a report which they titled American Dragnet. You can find the report at the source I've given at the bottom of the slide. The summary of the report is, when you think about government surveillance in the United States, you likely think of the National Security Agency or the FBI. You might even think of a powerful police agency such as the New York City Police Department. But unless you or someone you love has been targeted for deportation, you probably don't immediately think of Immigration and Customs Enforcement, which is commonly known as ICE. This report argues you should. Our 2-year investigation reveals that ICE now operates as a domestic surveillance agency. It's not only been building its own capacity to use surveillance, it's also played a key role in the federal government's larger push to amass as much information as possible about all of our lives. In other words, it's extended beyond the people they're looking into. They know about a lot of us. In its efforts to arrest and deport, they have, without any judicial, legislative, or public oversight, reached into data sets, just think of data brokers, containing personal information about the vast majority of people living in the U.S., whose records can end up in the hands of immigration enforcement simply because they apply for driver's licenses, drive on the roads, sign up with their local utilities to get access to heat, water, and electricity. So there is an agency, ICE, that's another example, ICE, that has been using these data brokers' data sets to collect a lot of information about a lot of people. Well, there's another way that data about us is collected: cell phone tracking. I don't know about you, but when I get a piece of software which has a privacy statement, terms of conditions, terms of privacy, whatever they call it, I frequently don't really read it very carefully. But when we use hardware or software, we almost always are told in some way, somehow, that we are agreeing to abide by that hardware's or software's privacy policy, which states that information will be collected and how it will be used. This is still on the cell phone. It's still Carpenter versus United States, but we're still talking the cell phone, and we are still talking about cell phone tracking. So a cell phone, the United States the Constitution Center reported that a cell phone faithfully follows its owner beyond public thoroughfares and into private residences, doctors' offices, political headquarters, and other potentially revealing locales. Accordingly, when the government tracks the location of a cell phone, it achieves near perfect surveillance, as if it had attached an ankle monitor to the phone's user. So how do they do it? So each phone has a unique hardware ID. The ID is called International Mobile Equipment Identity, with the letters IMEI, and that is used to track phones. The problem is, for most phones, it's really difficult to change that IMEI number So for most phones, if you're using that phone, you're going to be tracked. So is there a way to avoid this tracking? Well, you can get a phone that's not connected to your identity. The phone is commonly called a burner cell phone. It doesn't, it's called a burner because a lot of times drug dealers will use this approach that I'm going to talk about. And after they use the phone for, I don't know, a few days, they throw the phone away and get another phone. So basically they burn the old phone. So it's called a burner cell phone. So how do you do it? How do you get a burner cell phone? Well, first of all, you must leave your cell phone home. You don't want to be tracked by your cell phone if you're going to go somewhere and buy a burner phone. When you buy the burner phone, you need to use cash. Because if you use a credit card, that phone will be tied to your credit card, which is, of course, tied to your name. A popular place to buy a burner phone is Walmart, but there are other places as well. Once you purchase the burner phone, put it in an RFID bag or sleeve before getting into your car. What the RFID bag or sleeve does is it suppresses the phone's radio transmission so that nobody can hear that phone, and no cell phone tower can hear that phone. That's what that's doing, okay? And a note, never turn on your burner phone and cell phone in the same location at the same time. If you do that, you associate your cell phone and your burner phone, and basically your burner phone's anonymity has been blown. What are these RFID bag sleeves things? Well, there is if you want to know more, there is a company. I think they've changed their name. They used to be called Silent Pocket. They definitely are at slnt.com. They make a whole bunch of things. They make bags, phone sleeves, credit card wallets, jackets and pants, clutch purses, plain old wallets, and passport wallets, all to protect various devices from being tracked, being sniffed. So when it comes time to use it, leave your cell phone home, take your burner phone with you in an RFID bag, take it out of the bag only after you're several miles from home, approximately 3 miles. Put the phone back in the bag when you're done at the end of the day or at the end of your trip, again, approximately 3 miles from home. And if you're careful, and I do mean if you're careful, if you forget, you don't use the RFID bag or sleeve, you will burn the burner phone. But if you're careful, the burner phone will not be associated with you. And this can be done. There's a guy by the name of Michael Bazzel, B-A-Z-Z-E-L, who writes a lot about privacy, and he uses a burner phone all the time. There's more that can be done with your phone. There's something called Bluetooth on your phone. I'm certain you've heard about it. But there can be a problem when you're at a coffee shop, fast food restaurant, whatever. There is a technique called blue snarfing. It can happen without your knowledge. It's up to 300 feet away. Blue snarfing can access and steal contact information, emails, calendar entries, passwords, photos, and other PII. So if you're in those settings, either turn your Bluetooth off or use an RFID bag or sleeve. According to that famous saying, but wait, there's more. And in this case, there is more. Blue bugging is the most malicious Bluetooth hack. The hacker can get full access and control of the device without your knowledge. They can listen to and make phone calls, read and reply to text messages, and gain access to online accounts or apps. Again, turn Bluetooth off or use an RFID bag or sleeve. I mentioned earlier that slint.com has protection for credit cards and passports. Well, passports have an RFID feature that can be read by others. Credit cards which have the tap to use feature can be read by others. Also, if they have the stripe on the side. In both cases, if you use an RFID bag, sleeve, wallet, purse to protect them, you will do so. Here's a picture of what it could look like. On the right-hand side is just a thin piece of material, which is on one side of a set of credit cards. And in this picture, there's a similar piece of material on the back side of the credit cards. I personally use one of these in my wallet. I have it on, when I have my wallet in my pocket, I make certain that that piece of material is on the outside of the wallet. That is to protect it from any scanning. My understanding is that this material will protect up to about 2 inches worth of credit cards. So it's very effective. On the left-hand side, I don't know if you can buy this one anymore, but on the left-hand side is a little credit card sized wallet, I'll call it. It holds about 3 or 4 cards, and it's an RFID protective device. My wife uses one of those. She likes to be minimal, and so she normally just carries that around whenever she's going somewhere. It has her driver's license, a credit card, and some cash in it. What about your car and your privacy? A bunch of reporters at the Mozilla Foundation did an investigation into cars, and they stated all 25 car brands we researched earned our privacy not included warning, making cars the official worst category of products for privacy that we have ever reviewed. They noted that the cars collect too much personal data. Most car manufacturers, 84%, share or sell your data. 92% give drivers little or no control over their personal data. And the authors of the article said, we could not confirm whether or not any of them meet our minimum security standards. And what they meant by that was, is the personal data encrypted? So how does it collect your data? Microphones, cameras, and sensors in the car, connected services in the car. When it says connected services, what it means is if you've got a car that has an embedded service, I don't know what I would say, maybe like Pandora or Sirius XM, but some service that's connected. Devices you connect to the car. If you have a recent car, you know that there's something called CarPlay that will connect your phone to your car, and that is a device you connect to the car. So that's how it collects data about us. So what data? It collects data, that's how it does it. What does it collect? What you do, where you go, what you say, how you move your body. Nissan, in their privacy policy statement, says that they collect sexual activity, genetic information, and more. Honda says they collect personal information. And the wording gets really involved, so I'll try to make this clear. Private personal information means anything that identifies, relates to, describes, or is capable of being associated with a particular individual, including, but not limited to, his or her name, signature, social security number, physical characteristics or description, height, weight, address, telephone number, passport number, driver's license or state identification card number, insurance policy number, education, employment, employment history, bank account number, credit card number, debit card number, or any other financial information, medical information, or health insurance information. They go on to say, we cooperate with government and law enforcement officials and private parties to enforce and comply with the law. When they say they cooperate, what they mean is warrant not required, search warrant not required. You ask, we will give it to you. We may use and disclose covered information and any other information about you to government or law enforcement officials or private parties, if in our discretion we believe it is necessary or appropriate to respond to legal requests, including court orders, investigative demands, and subpoenas. to protect the safety, property, or rights of ourselves, consumers, or any other third party, to prevent or stop any illegal, ethical, or legally sanctionable, actionable activity, or to comply with law. Well, it looks kind of good, but when you read the words, it really means you ask, we'll give it to you. So I have a Honda. Honda does not provide any way to turn off location tracking. The 2024 Honda CR-V offers users a data sharing option. It shows up every time you start the car to control what data is shared. And the car has an explanation. You can control what's shared. But when you click on the option to control what's shared, it always comes up with invalid network, and you cannot access it. You cannot control the data that's being shared. Moving on. So many of us use Google's Gmail, Chrome, Google Docs, etc. What information does Google collect? The activity we may collect includes terms, videos, views and interactions with content and ads, voice and audio information, purchase activity, people with whom you communicate or share content, activity on third-party sites and apps that use our services. We also collect the content you create, upload, or receive from others when using our services. This includes things like email you write and receive, photos and videos you save, docs and spreadsheets you create, and comments you make on YouTube videos. If you use our services to make and receive calls or send and receive messages, we may collect and log information like your phone number, calling party number, receiving party number, forwarding numbers, sender and recipient email address, time and date of calls and messages, duration of calls, routing information, and types and volumes of calls and messages. We collect information about your location when you use our services, which helps us offer features like driving directions, search results for things near you, and ads based on your general location. So what can we do? Well, we can protect our personal information when we use reputable websites and a privacy-focused browser. Don't browse aimlessly. Don't check out websites that might be interesting. Have a purpose for going to a website. And there are many browsers, but many do not respect your privacy. Chrome, I already told you about Chrome when I was going through what Google collects. Chrome, even though it's very popular, it is a nightmare. It feeds everyone's personal information to Google. The most respected browser for privacy, I will argue, is Firefox. Some people will argue that other browsers are better, but I will argue that it is Firefox. However, on an iPhone, Safari should be used. And that's because Apple restricts the features. I say the features here to make it kind of clear, but they restrict the technology that Firefox would use to make it more private, but they won't allow that to be done on an iPhone. Now, for Firefox, there are many extensions that are available, but for most users, only one is needed. uBlock Origin. It's an extent. It works very well. I use it all the time. It blocks ads and other content. You can, in Firefox, go into settings, look for enhanced tracking protection, and select strict mode. Now, strict mode will make your privacy even better, but it's possible that some websites will not work correctly. But when you're in strict mode, there are multiple settings which you can try to see if you can get the website to work correctly. I personally don't use strict mode, but it certainly is a possibility. It depends upon your personal threat model. Have you heard about advanced persistent threat actors? These are otherwise known as major nation-state actors. China, Iran, North Korea, Russia, and the United States are all well known as having nation-state actors. Well, are they a threat to us? They tend to be interested in sets of individuals. For example, in 2015, the Office of Personnel Management suffered a data breach which exposed 21.5 million individuals with federal security clearances. The breach included a lot of information, including social security numbers and information related to background investigations. It basically who you know, who you work with, who you're affiliated with, your associations. So nation state actors tend to be interested in that type of information, large sets of interest to them where they might be able to threaten, leverage, hack a person into doing something for them. Are there any that are, however, a threat to us? There is a Chinese actor. They're called Volt Typhoon. They try to blend into normal network activity by routing traffic through compromised small office and home office SOHO network equipment, including routers, firewalls, and VPN hardware. That's us, routers, small home and office routers. Microsoft has confirmed that many of the devices, which include those manufactured by Asus, Cisco, D-Link, Netgear, and Zyxel, allow the owner to expose management interfaces to the internet. And that's crucial. And by the way, what we're talking about here is remote management on a router. So what can you do? You can log into your router, do an administrative login, turn off remote management. Now, if you have Comcast and maybe another ISP where the router comes from the internet service provider, you very likely won't be able to turn that off because that's how they control that router that you have rented from them. So while you're logged in, also turn off universal plug and play. A lot of times it's just called UPnP. And this may seem a little bit strange, but if you use a cell phone at other Wi-Fi locations, turn your phone off and then back on after you leave that location. Finally, it's possible for these actors to get into your router even though they can't access the remote management feature. It's possible somehow, and I don't completely understand how this works, but they can still use your router as a home base. But if you turn your router off and back on, they are kicked off the router. They have to come back and try to reestablish a beachhead into your router. So if you turn it off and back on some period of time, maybe weekly, maybe monthly, but some periodic period of time, you'll be able to get rid of those guys. All right, so what can I do? Well, don't purchase hardware. And by hardware, I mean PCs, laptops, phones, modems, routers, keyboards, mice. I do mean hardware or software made by companies that are headquartered in China or in Russia. Most hardware is good for 5 to 7 years. At the end of its life, replace it. And replace it with a known source. But when you talk about a known source, that brings up the fact that many companies have a supply chain that uses companies in China. There's not a thing we can do about it except to rely upon brand reputation to force those companies to ensure that their products do not contain malicious hardware or software during the process of building the equipment that's going to be delivered to you during the supply chain process. There are ways to keep personal information private when communicating, but we need to be aware of software app privacy policies. Let's go through a few. Text messages, very popular, iPhone and Android. So text messages are sent between phones. If it's between an iPhone and Android or an Android and Android, the text messages are not encrypted in transit. These text messages provide no privacy. If you're sending text messages from one iPhone to another, the app called iMessages encrypts those messages in transit. The way Apple has set it up, if you are using standard data protection, which is the default, iMessages are stored encrypted in iCloud, and the encryption keys are sent to Apple. But if you use advanced data protection, which is iOS 16.2 and later, iMessages are stored encrypted in iCloud, same thing, but the encryption keys remain on your phone, which gives you better privacy because it's less likely that someone will be able to use those encryption keys that are on the Apple servers to access your texts. Here's some privacy information about WhatsApp. First of all, it provides encrypted text messages, calls, photos, videos, voice messages, documents, and status updates. It's very popular around the world. It's very popular in South America. It's very popular in India. It's used to do a lot of things, but here's their privacy policy. We collect device and connection-specific information when you install, access, or use our services. This includes information such as hardware model, operating system information, battery level, signal strength, app version, browser information, mobile network, connection information, including phone number, mobile operator, or ISP, language and time zone, IP address, device operations information, and identifiers. We collect and use precise location information from your device with your permission when you choose to use location-related features. Even if you do not use our location-related features, we use IP addresses and other information like phone number area codes to estimate your general location, that is, city and country. So they collect a lot of info. How about Signal? You may have heard about Signal. Here's what they do. All messages, attachments, voice calls, and video calls are encrypted at all times. They are never collected and are stored locally on your device. What that means is the information is never collected and is stored locally on your device. Their privacy says you register a phone number when you create a Signal account. And by the way, this is no longer the case. You can now register a Signal account without a phone number. Phone numbers, so this privacy is worst case. You can actually create an account without a phone number. Phone numbers are used to provide our services to you and other Signal users. You may optionally add other information to your account, such as a profile name and profile picture. This information is end-to-end encrypted. Have there been tests of the Signal's privacy policies? Yes. There have been at least 2 federal grand jury requests for data from Signal. And Signal has been able to respond that they know only the date and time the account was created. Of course, they know the phone number and the last date and time the account was accessed. So Signal is very good for privacy. Let's talk about Proton Mail. A columnist for the Washington Post interviewed Andy Yen, who is Proton CEO, back in June of 2023. And he told the columnist that he doesn't expect anyone to quit Gmail or whatever email provider you're using. He imagines Proton as a place for communications that you want to keep private, like those among your friends and family, or email related to your finances and health. Our goal is not to be the only email account you use. It's to be the email account for things that matter, for privacy. Last time I heard, there were 100 million Proton Mail accounts. It's very likely you have friends and family who are using Proton Mail. Not a given, but it's very likely. Their privacy policy essentially says we cannot see the, we cannot see the contents of the encrypted message body. Here's a question I get, excuse me. Here's a question that I get. Does a virtual private network provide privacy? Well, how does it work? Let me turn on the laser pointer. This is you, the VPN client. A VPN creates an encrypted tunnel between here and the VPN server. Everything that you communicate, whether it's browser activity or email or whatever it is you're doing that goes out to the web, goes through this encrypted tunnel from your computer to the VPN server. Why would you use it? Well, the internet service providers that are between here and here cannot look inside that tunnel. Hackers who might be interested in you cannot look inside that tunnel. Governments, and you can use this, the VPNs around the world. Well, some places it's illegal, but just talking about assuming it's legal, it is legal in most countries. Governments who might want to monitor what you're doing cannot break through that encrypted tunnel. So it protects you from these three types of observers. Once your communication leaves the VPN server, that tunnel is no longer working. Anything that you do from here out is encrypted only if it was encrypted back here. So if you go to a browser and you're using HTTPS, which says it's encrypted, that's encrypted through here, all the way through here, all the way to whatever website you're going to. And the same thing is true with email. Nowadays, email is encrypted. So it's encrypted here, all the way through the tunnel, continues encrypted all the way to the email provider. That's what a VPN does. So why would you use it? To change your geographic location. Let's say you want to watch Netflix while you're out of the country. To access your bank. Banks are very sensitive to the IP addresses. If they think you are not at home, they will not let you access your bank account. Or to prevent surveillance, as I indicated in the previous slide, VPN makes it impossible for governments to see what you're doing as the traffic travels through their country. But there are some misleading claims. A VPN does not prevent malware, because once you go outside past the VPN server, you are on the internet. So a VPN does not prevent malware. It does not prevent access to malicious websites. It does not provide anonymity, because any browser can be fingerprinted. And when I say fingerprinted, what I mean is every browser has what's called a user agent. I didn't put this in a slide. I'm just going to kind of sketch it out. And that user agent tells the website what type of browser it is, what type of search engine it's using, what operating system is being used, the size of the display on your computer, so how high the display is, how wide it is, the resolution of the display. All of this is set because it's useful to the website in order to be able to give you information formatted such it appears nicely on your screen. But in the process of doing that, it makes it possible to fingerprint your browser. The chances are your browser is almost close to being unique, meaning that it's almost close to making it possible to know it's you just by looking at the fingerprint signature. Now, the Tor browser does take steps to block fingerprinting by insisting that, they tell you don't change the size of your display. And that's why, because if you do that, then you make your Tor browser, you make that copy unique. And so it's easier to identify you. So the Tor browser has steps to try to prevent fingerprinting. But the point is, a VPN does not provide an anonymity just because it's possible for the browser to be fingerprinted. So Proton VPN has a privacy policy of no logs. All of the Proton VPN servers are encrypted. Now, you may be aware of an incident that occurred, by now I'm guessing it's like 3 or 4 years ago, where a young kid in France was doing something malicious and using Proton email. And it turned out that, according to Swiss law, your IP address is not protected. If somebody asks Proton Mail to reveal the IP address that was used, it's not protected. But Proton VPNs by law in Switzerland are protected. So this low logs VPN service stands, and you do have privacy no matter where you are. And Proton recommends that if you really want to use Proton email and you're concerned about the that IP, that provision in the law that allows the IP addresses to be revealed to whoever legally wants them, they suggest you use a VPN to access Proton Mail. That way, you're protected. There are other ways to do some protection of your privacy. You can use your phone's hotspot to avoid public Wi-Fi. A very good idea. You never really know if the public Wi-Fi is innocent. Maybe I shouldn't even use the word innocent. If it's not doing anything, or if it's actually a malicious website. Now, if you decide to use your phone's hotspot, you might want to use a VPN, because that would provide privacy from the carrier, your cell phone carrier, whether it's T-Mobile, Verizon, or whoever it is. And that, if you think about the slide I showed you before, you can think about how that VPN goes to, let's say you're using Proton, it goes to a Proton VPN server, but it goes right past the carrier. In other words, when I say right past, I mean the carrier can't look into what's going on your traffic. But I do want to note that if you do decide to use VPN software on your phone and you're using the hotspot, okay, let's back up. You can put VPN software on your phone as an app. That will protect traffic on your phone. However, it will not protect traffic on a hotspot. So if you want to use a hotspot and you want to have privacy using a VPN, you have to put the VPN on the app that is using the hotspot. So, for example, if you want to use your laptop to access something and you're using Proton VPN, that laptop has to have Proton VPN running. That the cell phone does not provide any VPN coverage. It can't provide it. It's not just a matter it doesn't, it cannot provide it, because cell phones have two network stacks. The network stack that the VPN app is using on your cell phone uses one of those stacks. The other stack is totally separate, and the VPN app on your phone cannot access that stack. That's why you have to use your own VPN app on your device, whether it's a laptop, desktop, whatever it is, to protect yourself when you're using a carrier, a cell phone carrier. What about artificial intelligence and our privacy? Well, you know, there's an awful lot said about artificial intelligence. I have done some reading about how AI works. I think this one might possibly be one of the better explanations of how AI works. This guy who wrote it, let's see, what's he part of? He's either part of Microsoft or Facebook's Meta effort. I forget which one it is, but he's an active person in artificial intelligence. He wrote an article which sets aside all of the math that you normally would encounter when you're reading about how AI works. He does the explanation using only middle school math, basically addition and multiplication. And it's fully self-contained. The idea is he wants you to be able to understand modern large language models and the transformer architecture, and he avoids fancy language and jargon. So you might find that a very helpful thing to read in order to understand how AI works. Now, it is, I would say it's comprehensive. I think by the time you're done, you'll have a very good idea of how AI works. Let's go on to the more pragmatic feature of how AI works. It requires a large amount of data to learn effectively. I think you've heard about that by now, how the guys who started out AI, they would copy websites, contents of websites, they would scan books, they would listen to videos, they would listen to podcasts, anything at all that had data, they would input that into AI. Now that data trains the models. And the training is important because it allows the models to recognize patterns, make predictions, and generate outputs. The quality of the data is crucial. High quality, relevant data, and diverse data improves the model's performance. Now, there are quite a few AI models. I'm not even attempting to list all the models. These I think are probably the most well-known, and that's what I'm trying to do, because there are well-known general purpose models. There's also very specific models that have been trained to work in just a very narrow area. So I'm not trying to identify all the models. Many of those models state that they do not collect your private information when you interact with the model. What about personal AI assistants? Personal data from data brokers, I've talked about data brokers already, is extensive, but it may not be sufficiently up to date for an assistant. But data that's taken directly from our smartphones, computers, or our web usage is high quality, relevant, diverse, and up to date. Let's talk about a personal assistant called Apple Intelligence. Apple has just announced this. Okay? The slogan that they've come up with, AI for the rest of us. They say on their website, to help you write, express yourself, and get things done effortlessly. To discover an even more capable, integrated, personal Siri. It draws on your personal context without allowing anyone else to access your personal data, not even Apple. Which raises the question, what private information is Apple Intelligence going to collect in my personal context? Is it going to read my email? Is it going to track me across websites? Is it going to track what I read and watch? Is it going to track what I purchase? Is it going to track my bank account balance? Is it going to track where I travel and where I stay? Will it turn on the microphone to listen to what I say? Will it turn on the camera? Will it watch my eyes to see where I'm looking and how long I look? Is it going to track who I associate with? Do I trust Apple with my private information? This is my threat model. Now we're going into my threat model. I don't think I made that clear before, but this is my personal threat model. Do I trust Apple with my private information? Well, this is probably like maybe 3 years ago. Apple put in place CSAM detection to identify and report users who have child sexual abuse material. And they were doing it without a search warrant. But I understand the desire to try to suppress the use of CSAM. That makes a lot of sense. I agree with it. But not having a search warrant, a private company, not a legal law enforcement company, private company, doing this without a search warrant, that raised my eyebrow. Another thing, do I trust Apple with my private information? You probably heard that the NSO group has some Pegasus spyware that has obtained personal information from iPhones several times. Now, it's been pointed out to me that the Apple company has fixed the problems. Each one that occurs, they have fixed the problem, and that particular technique for Pegasus to access personal information has been closed. But the Pegasus spyware has been expanded to get additional information in other ways. So that group in particular knows a lot about iPhones, and it knows how to penetrate the iPhones. Again, the question is, do I trust Apple with my private information? And this time, the question is, will Apple Intelligence monitor my information or actions to determine if it thinks I've done something wrong? And if it does, what would it do? Do I trust Apple with my private information? Neither Apple nor any other company can absolutely protect private information, but still Apple claims it will. So my threat model is a crucial factor, which I think is where the rubber hits the road when privacy is involved. Security failures can be fixed. Privacy failures cannot be fixed. And my conclusion, I won't use Apple Intelligence. The risk appears to be too high. I want you to see the application of a personal threat model for a particular application. And that's the reason I did that. So in summary, data brokers collect our personal information and sell it. There are apps such as Signal, and various Proton apps, which will protect our personally sensitive information. It's good practice to replace hardware or software made by companies headquartered in China and Russia, and be aware of your privacy when using artificial intelligence. Questions?
Very thorough. And yes, there are questions.
Mm-hmm. And John, please close the chat box. It makes me want to go to bed and pull the covers up over my head.
I had one of my members said she's going to get rid of her computer and her phone now.
And live in the basement. A comment, track phone is a great burner phone. Another one, if I regard myself as a law-abiding citizen, should I be worried?
My answer to that is I wouldn't think you would be, but it's interesting if you follow, unfortunately, you follow the political news and you see how things are twisted, misinformation and all that. Mm-hmm. I don't like that. I mean, the fact that you've got personal information out there, you never know what somebody's going to do with it.
And I feel so sorry for these kids these days, because when they go out to try to find a job, all the stuff they put out on the internet is there to haunt them, and they just don't get it. Does turning the phone completely off also disable tracking?
Unfortunately, no.
Don't you have to take the SIM card out?
Well, if you took the SIM card out, it would make it more difficult, but your phone would still be transmitting a radio signal. It would make it more difficult to be tracked because the cell phone carrier would have trouble, but you still could be tracked. If you really want to avoid tracking, you need one of those RFID bags or sleeves.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. How do you activate a burner phone to maintain privacy? Have the clerk set it up?
I don't know if a clerk would do that for you. What I would do is I would walk out of, let's say it's Walmart. I would walk side of Walmart's front doors and I would turn it on right there. I think there's like because they're kind of like pre-set up. They're prepaid minutes is one way you could think of it. That's one way to do it. Prepaid minutes.
How do cars share data externally? Doesn't that require cell service?
Yes, it does. And Depending upon the age of your car automatically has cell service. You don't pay for it. It's just operational. If you look at your car, like when the time zone changes, your car changes the time zone, and it has the reason it does it goes to the uses the national the network time protocol to get the time, and it updates and it reports what you're doing real time to whoever.
How long have cars been doing that? Do you have a started?
That's a good question. I think our take it back. Our 2011 pilot did not do it, but our 2021 CRV did. So somewhere between 2011 and 2021, they started doing it.
My 2013 is clueless.
Good.
It's and I'll just keep it that way, no problem. If using public Wi-Fi at the airport, I don't access email or bank websites, but is it safe to view a YouTube on Safari browser?
I wouldn't. I don't trust, especially at an airport, I would not trust the Wi-Fi.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you wanted to use Wi-Fi, you could instead take your phone and use your cell data and access the YouTube video using your cell phone cellular data. That way you don't use public Wi-Fi.
Okay, good idea. All right, I'm finished with my chat box questions. Al, could we see you instead of Al Williams, presenter? And if you have any questions for Al, please raise your hand and get in line. And John is first.
I'd like to know if you could tell me if the National Public Data Breach, where they amassed their data from.
That's a really good question, because I was kind of curious about them. First of all, I found out that the guy who put the National Data Breach, that company, National Data, together was previously had been a deputy sheriff down in Florida. And I think what he did was he purchased data from some of the other data brokers. One of the things I really was surprised at when I was reading what he had done, he collected a list of concealed carry people in the United States. I wondered, why in the world did he do that? Anyway, that's about as much as I know about National Public Data.
Thank you.
Gabe.
Hi, just a clarification. I have a 2007 Honda, which doesn't do cellular anything, but it updates the clock in the car from GPS. So your car may not be updating by a cellular connection. Mine uses the GPS. I have a navigation system built in the car, and so it uses the GPS satellites to tell me where I am, but it also uses the satellite time signals, not a cellular, to fix the time clock, the car clock.
Okay. I was trying to do it from memory, and I thought I had to adjust the time on our 2011 pilot. But anyway, it's been a while.
Some cars can deal with daylight savings time automatically. Some cannot. But if they pick it up from the GPS satellites, they'll stay synchronized.
With my 2013, I have to manually set the clock. It's a Toyota. Do we have any more questions? I am absolutely shocked that we don't have 16,000 questions here, because I kept picking things out and going, oh, didn't know that. Oh my gosh, have to tell my members this, have to tell my members that. Bob has a hand up.
Well, Bonnie jumped ahead of him. So I'm gonna let Bonnie do it.
Thank you. As soon as you said that, I'm trying to write to a friend that I've met that's in a war, in a country that's under attack.
Mhm.
So I'm wondering, I've just heard of Signal.
Mhm.
I was also thinking, now that I hear about Proton, I mean, she'd have to have the same thing, right? For me to be able to use words like the country's name that's attacking them. I'm even uncomfortable with that at this point. That
Well, the nice thing about, well, yes, if a Proton user is talking with another Proton user by email, it is private. Now, if you are using Proton and you contact a Gmail user, you can. And you can do it in two different ways. One way is you just send it to them as a Gmail, to their Gmail account. It will be in the open. It'll be encrypted in transit, but it won't have the same protection as Proton. The other way you can do it is you can set up a password on that email so that it never actually goes to the Gmail account. What happens instead is they get a notification that they have a message. They have to log in to Proton Mail with that password in order to see the message. So that's a good way to protect your email when you're working with somebody who doesn't have a Proton Mail account.
okay, thank you. And that instead of Signal or better than
Signal is a great text message. It's great also for phone calls. You want to talk with the person because the phone calls are encrypted. You can do video calls. You can do conference phone calls. Signal is a great little app. I use it all the time.
it's like Zoom?
No, yeah, Zoom right here. Actually, it's in a way it's like Zoom. You can have several people in a conference call, but there is a limit. I'm not certain what the limit is. I'm going to guess it's like 20.
Oh, that's
It's
fine.
pretty good.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Mhm.
Now we can go to Bob.
Hi, Al.
Hello, Bob.
Marvelous presentation. I can't tell you how old this iPhone is. It's at least 3 years old. Anyway, when you click on power off, you choose that.
Mhm.
It's still on. Is it still on anyway? Is it still communicating? I ask this because I've noticed that because I have it turned off all the time. I only use it sporadically, but I noticed the battery power goes down. So it's using energy, even though it's supposedly off.
Correct.
Your thoughts?
The answer is yes, it does use power when you turn it off, and it still transmits to the cell phone towers, and your phone can still be tracked.
Thank you.
Diane, how you doing?
I gave Gary, since he was at the top of my list.
Well, it would help if I went up to the top up there, but I'm down at the bottom answering chats.
Am I up or not?
You are.
Okay, this is Gary. Say, just a question for clarification. On the airport issue with security, I've been telling people that if they're using a VPN, that's a secure way versus having it on their phone to like watch those YouTube videos, because a VPN should get you out of the airport or any public location or any public Wi-Fi. That's my understanding.
That is correct.
Okay. And then you also talked about ad blockers and stuff. You can use different virus protection software. I use like Bitdefender, which does a lot of the things like protect your data, and it has VPN kind of built into it, VPN that you can purchase. So I think or Nord is another one. Some of those I think will add some of the protection that you've been talking about. Is that correct also? Maybe you're not familiar with Bitdefender.
No, I am, but I'm very reluctant when a company decides to bundle things together. I get very reluctant because it's very hard to be very good at the same time in a wide range of technologies. So I get very reluctant when I hear about things like that, where somebody is selling a VPN and selling a malware detection. I just might work. I wouldn't trust it. I guess that's the answer. I wouldn't trust it. Are there other VPNs which are good? I think there are. I know other people like other VPNs. I personally have chosen Proton VPN because I like their business model. You can get a free account and use a free VPN. It won't work as well as the paid version, but that's the way it is. But when you have a subscription like I do with Proton and you're using their VPN, that helps to pay for the people who can't afford it. I personally think Proton VPN is a great choice. Can't say that there are not other choices, but one of the problems is when you read VPN reviews, almost all of those reviews are paid for by the companies who are being reviewed. So it's very difficult to trust a VPN review.
I agree. I mean, they're all paid for, but at the same time, I don't know that I'd put all my eggs in Proton either. So
Well,
it's just,
that's possible. I mean, I've chosen to do that because I think that they're very reputable and they're very transparent. Their software is open source. I think they're highly credible.
fair enough.
To have smart computing back for a magazine. They did not have any ads in any way, shape, or form, and were totally unbiased. Diane Binder.
Oh,
Come on, it's my turn.
well, let me switch it around because Lee was first, and so I'll ask her to unmute so that she can go.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep.
Mhm.
Okay, my question was about RFID folders, and I'm looking at them on Amazon. Probably a man wouldn't understand this, but I have RFID wallets, but women change wallets like they do purses. So
Mhm.
not all of them are protected. I
Mhm.
like the idea of a slim line folder that's lightweight that I could put my most important cards in. Do you have a recommendation? How do you know? They're on Amazon? They're priced all the way from $6 to $40. So how do you know if it's a good one?
That's a really good question. It's almost impossible to know, which is why I recommended slnt.com, because they give their specifications at their website and you can buy their products on Amazon.
What? What was that?
Sierra Lima November Tango.com.
Love that.
And it
Okay.
will be in the follow-up material in the slideshow.
Oh, it will. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay, we've got a few more minutes, so we'll try to get through these last questions before Al has to go to his next meeting.
And Peter will be our last question. No, Kathleen will be our last question. Lee, you're on.
I'm a statistician, so when anybody talks to me about risks, I usually look for the statistics behind them. So I'm curious, what would be a good source to go to find out how many times people get their privacy violated and what the costs have been in terms of personal integrity and dollar costs? Do you have data on that so I would know how worried to be?
Yes and no. I have data in the following sense. I'm the president of the computer club here, and we work with many residents of a retirement community, and we frequently are asked to help residents who have been scammed. Some of the residents I'm starting to think through the episodes. Some of the residents have lost $7,000. One almost lost $54,000, but the check was stopped. What I'm trying to do is to try to say that in terms of costs, most of the times that I can think of, it's all been in the thousands of dollars, and it's happened fairly frequently. That's not enough information for a statistician. I don't have that type. This is more like I can't think of the name, Bayes' theorem. Bale's probability. I think that's the right guy, right? It's not the standard statistics, it's the statistics you use when you try to infer information from very limited information, that's the type of probability I'm using.
Anecdotal.
Some people would argue it's anecdotal. There's a very nice book on it, if you're curious. Let's see, just a second here.
I love it. He just gets up and goes to his bookshelf. His nice background there.
He may never come back though.
This
We hear a crash and he's no longer on the screen.
no, it's, okay, oh. The book title is The Theory That Would Not Die. Oh, it's
Bayesian statistic.
Bayes' Rule.
Yeah.
It's a very interesting book.
Would you put that in the chat box before you leave?
Oh, okay. I personally, I mean, it's not mathematic. It's all about the Presbyterian pastor who came up with it and then abandoned it. It's all about how other people discovered it and said, wow, this is useful.
Right.
Okay, so it's Bayes' Rule, and let me find the chat box. Where is the chat box? There it is.
So thank you. Hey, Pierre, I bet he can multitask and listen for your question while he's typing.
Yes, hi everyone. A few comments, not questions. VPN at the airport, yes, absolutely. I've been using my own VPN, not a VPN service, for the past 18 years. I use OpenVPN, and the reason I use an open VPN is because it is open source, and therefore can be checked by other people. In terms of encrypting your mail, there's something that has not been mentioned that is also available, and you don't need Proton VPN or anything for that matter, but you need to be using an email client so that you can use PGP encryption, which is user-to-user encryption. But again, you need to use an email client. You can't be using you can't be watching your email on the website like gmail.com. And
Right.
Thunderbird is one example that has such PGP encryption capability built in. In terms of being unable to turn off data sharing on cars, well, here's a little bit of a question. Would it be the only way to get that to happen, to convince your elected officials to pass laws to mandate it? Or, I mean, basically, car manufacturers will not give you that capability unless they're forced to, right?
Yes, that's true. In my opinion, we need to have some strong privacy laws and regulations with felony. If you violate it, it's a felony offense with jail time and also cost. As to PGP, I've used it in the past. And maybe it's easier to use now, but back then it was hard to get other people to also use PGP because you had to share keys. One of the things I really love about Proton Mail, they handle the keys for you.
Yes, I haven't looked at the details of how Thunderbird handles it, but it's better than it used to be.
Good.
But anyway, and my last comment about RFID sleeves is that if you're not too sure what you're buying will do, you can always line the inside of your wallet with aluminum foil so that you don't have to protect each individual card, each card individually. So that's another way of doing it.
Well, the RFID card that I was talking about a few minutes ago protects about 2 inches worth of cards. So you only need one of those little cards to cover a stack. So you don't have to be in.
Got it. Okay.
Okay, Kathleen, last question.
Thank you. I wanted to make sure I could get all of the links to the articles. It sounds like they will be in the information distributed after the
Correct.
presentation, because I know we won't see the slides for the presentation. So thank you.
And well, you will see the slides from the presentation. If Judy can match up your name to your registered email account. Yes, you will get the slideshow.
Hey, Al, this was absolutely fascinating. Thank you so very much. And I can't wait to see, well, I'm checking out your website to see what else you've done so I can or be honest about it, Judy, so I can request some more presentations. So thank you much and have a good time at your next meeting.
Just a passing thought. I've gone through a lot of high risk type stuff. The CISA, excuse me, the CISA has a a project called Project Upskill for people who are at risk, high risk. So if you guys would like to check that out, I think you'd find it very interesting. Project Upskill, I'll type that in right now. CISA.gov, Project Upskill. And what we're doing, I'm the main guy, we're putting together a course of 8 sessions covering Project Upskill, and we're expanding it to be a little bit more general. And that's going to be done in January through April or May.
And one of our security speakers was affiliated with CISA.
Okay, I should disappear.
Thank you so much, Al. Appreciate that. And as I said, we'll expect you in 2025 with the rest of the story.
Oh, my lands. Okay.
Well, right. It's going to always change.
All right. Thank you. Bye.